All right, let's get started. It is May 9th, 2019. This is the Kubernetes Weekly Community Meeting. My name is George Castro from SIG Contributor Experience, and I will be your host today. A few things before we get started. This meeting is being live streamed to YouTube and is publicly available, so please be cognizant of what you say. And as always, remember that the code of conduct is in effect. We're going to have a quick format change for this meeting. So first, instead of the demo, is going to actually be the release status from Claire, and then Stefan will go with the demo, and then the contributor tip of the week. We have a KEP of the week this week, and then we'll have some SIG updates. And with that, Claire, are you ready to take it away?
Yes.
Oh, yep. Real quick before you go, we're also looking for a note taker. Bob's put the URL in the Zoom chat. I'm unable to do it as I'm hosting and streaming at the same time, but anyone who wants to help, we'd really appreciate it. Okay, Claire, take it away.
Cool. All right, so 1.15 release update. We are almost through with week 5. Since this is an 11-week release cycle, we're at about the halfway point in the release. What happened this week? We had our 3rd alpha cut. And next week, we're going to have our first beta cut. The 1.15 branch cut and the 1.15 jobs will be created, and the 1.11 jobs will be removed. For enhancements, we are currently tracking for 47 enhancements, and we will see how that number changes as we get closer to code freeze. I'm probably going to now start reminding the community that code freeze is coming up at the end of this month. It is Thursday, May 30th. Any enhancements that are going to be in the 1.15 release need to be code complete by that code freeze date. And additionally, for any SIG leads who are on and listening, now is also the time you should start thinking about different themes for your SIG. If your SIG has any enhancements that are going to be delivered in the 1.15 timeframe, the release lead team has started going around and pinging different SIGs that have enhancements targeted. If you haven't heard from us yet, you will probably hear from us in the next day or two. And these themes are helpful for us as we start to think about the different communications and blog posts that we might want to put out around the 1.15 release. And another general announcement, if you're going to be at KubeCon EU, we will have an in-person face-to-face the Monday of Contributor Summit starting at 10 a.m. If you would like to attend that, feel free to ping me on Slack and I can send you the details. I think that's all I've got. If there are any questions.
Okay, looks like we're all set. Thanks, Claire. Moving on, Stefan is going to take 10 minutes to give us a demo on Flagger. Take it away, Stefan.
Hold on, George. I don't know if people can hear me, but Docs Google just stopped for me. I was taking notes and it's on reconnecting and it's not loading. So if somebody else actually can get it to load. Wait, I think it just loaded. Okay.
Yeah, it does this sometimes. We're just gonna have to power through.
Okay.
So just
I didn't know.
Thanks. All right. Take it away, Stefan.
Hi, folks. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I want to talk about a project that I've been working on since December now. It's called Flagger, and now it's part of the Weaveworks organization on GitHub. It's an open source operator. Just to introduce Flagger a little, what this operator does, it integrates with some service mesh solutions like Istio, App Mesh, or the Nginx ingress controller. The Nginx ingress controller was released today. And it uses these service mesh solutions to drive traffic, to control the routing inside the cluster. And it also integrates with Prometheus to run canary analysis. So what Flagger does, it has a control loop like any other operator, but instead of just listening for Kubernetes events around, let's say, Flagger CRD, which is a canary object, it also monitors your canary deployment and takes decisions based on key performance indicators. And I will show you this later. We had some goals when we start working on Flagger. One goal would be give developers confidence in automating the production releases. How we can achieve that is have a way to control the blast radius, right? So when you deploy a new version, you want, let's say the new version will fail. It always fails at some point, right? So the idea is to restrict the impact of that failure and have an automatically rollback if that's possible. And also, you should be able to define a validation process, how Flagger, how this automation tool can validate what will be shipped in production. And it uses a couple of KPIs, built-in KPIs, and you can set thresholds for that. Another goal was to make the deployment process observable. So Flagger comes with a Grafana dashboard. Also, it exports its own Prometheus metrics, has a built-in alerting system with Slack, but you can also use Alert Manager and have, I don't know, PagerDuty or whatever you are using as your alerting system. And of course, it emits Kubernetes events. So if you have some integration with the Kubernetes events, you can track all the changes that Flagger does inside your cluster. Another goal is to write as little YAML as possible. Like if you know Istio or Upmesh, just to provision a canary deployment, you have to create all these objects, like virtual services, virtual nodes, cluster IPs. You have to have multiple deployments and so on. The goal with Flagger is, instead of you having to create all these objects, Flagger will create it for you and will expose your app inside the cluster or outside the cluster based on some specification, like what's your application port and what's the internal and external domain you want to expose the app. That's it. And Flagger does all the rest. And last and not least is a way we call GitOps, a way to drive configuration for Kubernetes. So all your deployments, all your specs or YAMLs, CRDs, whatever they are, they will be in a Git repo. And when you make changes to that Git repo, those changes will be synchronized with the cluster. And I will be showing you GitOps pipeline right away. So a little overview of what Flagger does. The canary deployment in called canary here is the one that the user controls. You are in control of that. You create this deployment, and based on that deployment, Flagger, for example, detects if your deployment has secrets or config maps as dependencies, discovers all the deployment dependencies, and creates a clone of the deployment along with the secrets and config maps. Why it does that? Because every time you modify something, let's say you modify your container image tag, or you modify something in a config map, that change will go through analysis phase. So you are in control of the canary, and that canary is not exposed to your clients. The primary deployment is. So only after the analysis is complete, and if everything is okay, only then any change you made will be promoted as primary. And it also creates all these cluster IP services that are needed by the underlying service mesh implementation or by the Nginx controller. These are the key performance indicators that Flagger uses. So of course, it checks the deployment health status by looking at pods and all this stuff. It has built-in metric checks for request success rate percentage. what that means, let's say you can instruct Flagger and say, if my application, if 1% of the total requests are resulting in a 500 response, undo the deployment, fail the canary. Or if the average request latency is above 500 milliseconds, I don't want to deploy this in production, roll it back. Besides these two built-in metrics, you can create your own custom checks using PromQL. And you can extend the validation mechanism with webhooks. The idea behind webhooks are, let's say Flagger will call a webhook, and that webhook will start an integration test or loading tests, smoke tests, all kinds of checks that it will be impossible to just put all this logic inside Flagger itself. So webhooks are a way to extend this mechanism. And Flagger also comes with a webhook example is a load testing service. In terms of observability, I mentioned this. So Flagger emits Kubernetes events. You can do kubectl will describe a particular canary, and you can actually see what's going on with your deployment. It comes with a Grafana dashboard that I will show you right away, and it also publishes to Slack every time a deployment starts, and if it fails, why it failed, and if it succeeded, it will let you know it succeeded or not. This is how the canary CRD looks like. So there was some discussion at the beginning if we should build up on the deployment spec and create something like I don't know, canary deployment object that inherits all the Kubernetes deployment fields. And I started with that idea, and then I backed it up and I said, okay, we'll create the canary CRD, and inside the canary CRD, you reference a deployment. Why I did that? Because let's say now you have a deployment running in your production and you want to apply a canary to it. All you need to do is deploy this custom resource, reference your deployment, and let's say your horizontal pod autoscaler, and Flagger will take care of that deployment from that moment on. So you don't have to change what's running inside your cluster. You just add things up. And there are a lot of things you can set here. For example, the metrics, the thresholds, webhooks, and other things. This is how the load test looks. When Flagger detects there is a canary change, it starts the load test, and afterwards it looks at metrics. Okay, I'll just speed it up to give you the demo. So this is what I'll be showing you. I have a deployment, a canary object, and an horizontal pod autoscaler definition in my Git repo. When I'll do a modification, I have installed on my cluster with Flux, which syncs the Git cluster with the Git repository of the cluster. Then Flagger detects, oh, there is a change inside the deployment, and will run a canary analysis for it. So here is my Git repository. I have here those 3 files. I'm going into the deployment spec. I'll edit this one. So right now I'm running version 1.4.0. And let's say I want to deploy 4.1. I'm going to commit this change. And in like half a minute, there will be replicated on the cluster. Here on this side, you can see it's a tail of Flagger logs. And the Grafana dashboard, what it shows on the left side is the primary deployment, which is running right now and receives traffic from this one. And on the right side is the canary, which now is scaled to 0. So there is no traffic going to this deployment that you have control on. Now, as soon as the change will be delivered on the cluster, Flagger will detect that the revision change. So I said new revision detected, and what it does, it first scales up the deployment, It checks the health check of it, waits for the horizontal pod autoscaler to scale it up if it needs to, and afterwards it starts to route traffic little by little to the new instance. So now it started with 5%, and before it started, it also started the load test. As you can see now, my application will change. It will be balanced between the primary and the canary. What I can do, I can generate, let's say, some 500 errors for a couple of seconds. I'll close this one. And now Flagger has detected that the number of errors, the percentage of the 500 errors in the last minute is over 99%. And what it does, it halts the rollout. So the traffic right now is at 20%. If the errors continue, let's say for 10 iterations, it will roll back the canary and it will scale it down to 0. If the errors will disappear, I'm letting you have a toleration here. Let's say I accept some errors, but if it fails more than 10 times, or if it fails more than a couple of minutes, then roll it back. So hopefully it will come to 100% and you'll continue. Also, I can also generate latency, and we'll see the same behavior. It will pause the traffic shift, and it will wait for the latency to go below the threshold. So now it has recovered, then it advances the traffic volume. You can see here. And when it reaches 50%, all this stuff you can set it up in the canary. You can decide for how long you want to do the canary analysis, what are the thresholds, and all this stuff are configurable. I've set the canary now to 10-second interval, so I can demo it faster, but in a production environment, you'll probably want, I don't know, a couple of minutes, so you have enough data in Prometheus to make the right decisions. Okay, now it hit the maximum threshold, which is set to 50% traffic. So what I'm saying now, if my canary can do 50% of the whole traffic and there are no errors, then it's okay, and it will replace the production deployment, the primary. So what happens now? I have here 2 pods, the old pods, the version 4.0, and here is the canary. What will happen? Flagger will scale down the canary and will promote that deployment spec with all the secrets, config maps, all the dependencies over here to the primary instance. Why I'm not using the canary? Why, let's say, if it goes to 50%, why not just give it 100% and kill the primaries? Because I don't want the end user to have control over what's running in production. And that's why the primary, which is not in your control, is owned by Flagger. That's the one that is exposed outside of the canary deployment window. And what's happened now—
About 2 minutes left, sorry.
Yeah. What's happened now, the old pods were replaced with the new pods, with the spec from the canary, the new version. Here is no longer flickering. I'm 4.1 now. Everybody is on the new version, and the canary deployment has been scaled to 0. So this is how Flagger does canary deployments. Now, the problem you'll probably notice that my screen has flickered, right? So I was jumping from between versions. Normally, you don't want that for a front-end app. So that's why Flagger also supports A/B testing. So you can say only users with a particular header or a particular cookie will be routed to the canary deployment. And that will ensure, let's say, a session affinity. So your users don't have to switch from one version to another. But for backend services, routing based on weight makes perfect sense. for a stateless app or on web API. That was the demo. Thank you very much.
Okay, any questions? Any in chat?
I asked the question on the doc. Is the plan to offer this to the Kubernetes community or some other upstream location, or is this going to sort of be a product of Weaveworks?
So this is currently an open source project under the Weaveworks organization. We have plans to, I don't know, submit it to the CNCF sandbox at some point. The API is still alpha, so I think it will need a couple of months before it will get stable. I want to integrate with Linkerd and other service mesh providers, so I will have a stable API before I don't know, trying to get into the CNCF. But the end goal is, yeah, to have it into the CNCF at some point.
And then I'll make sure we put a link to the slides in there so you can follow up with Stefan if you have questions, because we got to get moving here time-wise. Thanks a lot. Moving on, the next is the contributor tip of the week. I wanted to link something that Christoph Blecker sent to the contributor experience list that we want to start taking advantage of the GitHub status. So in GitHub, you can say, I am not at work, I'm away, and tie that into our tooling so that when it's randomly picking who to assign reviews to in the owner's files, currently that's just a random thing. He wants to make it so that if you're on travel or something and you set your GitHub status, we can do a smarter weighted assignment and review thing. So click through to read that. And he wants to turn that on by Wednesday. So if you can give him some feedback this week, that would be great. Moving on, we have the KEP of the week. These are the Kubernetes enhancement proposals, and Andrew will be talking about kubeadmin, machine, and structured output.
Hey, thanks, George. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. That's okay? Great. So first of all, thank you to Stephen for reaching out and seeing if I would present. This is a pretty great honor, and I really appreciate it. This is my first KEP. So speaking of canaries, you know, this is maybe you can give me some feedback on how I did. And I built off all the other KEPs that I saw and took a stab at it. I presented it yesterday to Cluster Lifecycle, or sorry, the kubeadm working group, and there was a lot of enthusiastic discussion. So you know, hopefully this will move ahead. Just a real quick note, I did put this for 1.15. I know it was closed and we'd have to file an exception. kubeadm working group decided that this is it's probably a P2, so we're going to try to do alpha in 1.16 instead. I just haven't updated that yet here, so if you see it, you don't need to ask, because now you know. So a real quick TLDR on what this is. Currently, kubeadm, when you do a kubeadm init, it spits out this wall of text, and you get a kubeadm join at the bottom if you want to join other nodes or you want to create an HA cluster. And there are other commands that also emit text that change over time. The output changes. And a really good example is that kubeadm join command. In 1.12, there was no white space in front of that. In 1.13, there were 2 white space characters, 2 spaces. And 1.14, those spaces were gone. So I was building some automation and it was breaking with 1.13 and could not figure out why. And that was it. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I wonder if there's a way to make this a little bit more structured. And funny enough, and I don't know if he's on the call, but a gentleman by the name of Edward Bartosz from Intel over in Finland had been working on this very topic. And so I reached out to him and we sat down, we had a chat and decided, you know, maybe there have been a couple of efforts at this and they haven't really been successful. So let's try to formalize this into a KEP. So we worked on this together, and if he's not on the call, I want to say thank you very much. It was a pleasure with which to work. So the motivation is pretty simple. You've got tooling like Terraform, upcoming cluster API project that all need to be able to leverage kubeadm and parse its output. because you can't always invoke kubeadm as a library. Sometimes you're going to be running it in cloud init, and all you have is the text, or other, like Ignition for CoreOS, for example. All you have is the text. So it's very important that you can parse that output in a deterministic way. So up until the KEP, it was referred to as machine output. I started trying to kind of convert people to saying structured output, because I think that is really the important thing to take away here. It needs to be structured and deterministic and reliable. So ultimately, the goal is that kubeadm should support structured output, including but not limited to, and I'm not going to go over all the different types. You can read them yourself. We divide it into buffered and unbuffered. That is a little different than you might think. It doesn't mean necessarily that it's streaming every line that you get. Just so people understand what buffered and unbuffered mean, here's a quick example using both a text printer and a JSON printer. Buffered means if you've got a command like token list that emits 10 tokens, buffered the command would wait until all 10 tokens were known and then emit them all at once. Unbuffered would mean admit the tokens as you discover them. Same with JSON, right? You can emit JSON objects as you discover them, and when they do get emitted to standard out, it actually isn't legal JSON because it isn't part of an array, but there are ways to handle it. See, buffered's part of an array, unbuffered's not, but you could take that output, and there are tools that know how to handle that, such as JQ. Anyway, so the goals are structured output for the following, but not limited to, list of commands. So the non-goals, this is where it actually gets very interesting, and we had a long discussion about this yesterday and the kubeadm working group. I need to go through and update the KEP because I think there's an agreement on the path forward now. The first question a lot of people asked themselves when they read this was, hey, Andrew, Ed, why didn't you use CLI runtime? That's what kubectl uses. CLI runtime has a printers package. Why would you re-implement, why would you reinvent the wheel? Well, all three of these links go to the same explanation. That printers package requires the objects that are being printed to be of type runtime object, which means ultimately the output is versioned. Initially, we thought, well, that actually is the goal, right? We want it to be dependable and reliable. Versioned output makes sense. But we also did not want to define out of the gate that much technical debt to get this problem solved. We have an immediate need for it. But after talking with the kubeadm working group and this getting pushed to 116, I think we agree it makes sense to go ahead and probably start from there. So I'm going to be updating the KEP today or tomorrow to reflect that the initial design of this is going to be to translate the kubeadm commands to emit versioned objects. Now, because kubeadm is already in beta in terms of the API version, right? The objects, the output objects would belong to a new schema that is an alpha. About 2 minutes, Andrew. Thank you. We're going to reuse the kubectl output flag, and we're going to use the kubectl printers. And I think pretty much this is fairly obvious. If you've used kubectl, right, you can do -O and get any of those output options. You'll have the same thing for kubeadm. You'll have the ability to output as Go templates and be able to get the CA cert hash, the node that you want, as well as all of the different tokens. And yeah, I don't know how much more to go over. Really only 2 risks that were relevant. Versioned output's no longer really a risk. And then the tab writer is going to still be supported, or the tabular output will still be supported through a tab writer. And yeah, the graduation criteria should be pretty straightforward. I think the goal is to go alpha in 116 and then beta. I don't see a reason why it wouldn't go beta by 117 as long as people are happy with it. That's it. All right, great. Any questions? And what SIGs this fall under if people have to follow SIG cluster lifecycle. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, moving on to SIG updates. We have 3 today. Unfortunately, Nishi had to cancel last minute. However, she did have her slides for the SIG AWS update, and I've gone ahead and put the link to Justin Santa Barbara's SIG intro session at this upcoming KubeCon Cloud Native Con. But with that, that brings us to SIG contributor experience with Paris.
Hello, everyone. I was on mute. Can you see my slides? Okay, good to go. All right. First things first, for those that don't know me, my name is Paris Pittman. I work at Google. I am a co-chair of this awesome, amazing SIG called Contributor Experience that many of you are either a part of or not, but still because you're a contributor. So luckily for us, we actually have a planned intro at KubeCon Barcelona. So these slides are going to be seen there as well. So I think everybody's going to get a little preview here. So enjoy. Contributor experience is expanding, which is awesome. We are scaling out. We have milestones. We have sub-project boards. This is how we're starting to organize how we do business. And we also have a new way of contacting us through contributors at Kubernetes.io. This is part of the G Suite instance that the steering committee has, and we're actually looking to expand that, and I'll talk about that in a second as well. But we're also building teams. This is super cool. This is something your SIG should do as well. I'll get to that into a second too. But these are areas that we feel needed some attention and needed some planned mentoring opportunities and things like that. So we're building out a triage team. This would include like PR wranglers, issue triage captains, etc., an events team, a marketing team, and so much more. It's really cool stuff that's going on with our crew. You should definitely get involved if this is something that interests you. We have 26,000 contributors. That definition would be based on people who file issues, PRs, merge stuff, etc. So yeah, come and help us. We are pausing on our APAC meetings though. This was something that we tried as we expand in different markets for our contributor base. We feel like each market might be keen on having someone there so that they can either have meetings or educate folks on how to contribute or how to get involved, things like that. So if this is you or you know someone who would like to do this in APAC or get involved with APAC, growing APAC, etc., there is a link to the issue on this deck. This deck is full of links, and you will obviously, anybody and everybody can have access to the deck at a later time. So one of the sub-projects that we work on is mentoring. We're also getting into succession planning and contributor growth. Anytime I say mentoring, people are like kind of go and crawl in a corner or say, oh my gosh, I don't have any time, or say, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. No, really, this stuff is important. Definitely listen up. The reason why is we don't build programs based off of old concepts, meaning one-on-one and other time burdensome mentoring tactics and concepts. We're building programs around you as personas, your time, building easy succession plans through roles. We also build them on different learning styles, so documentation, videos, not just words. And then also delivery. So this will be face-to-face as well as online. What's live now? We've got a speed mentoring two sessions at Barcelona. This just opened. Last year we did over 150, we had 150 people there. Everybody gets special swag, AKA if you're a mentor, you get special swag. Heard it once, I'm never gonna repeat it again. And please sign up. It's a really unique experience where we pod you, pun intended, with people who are looking for help in some way, and it's not a one-on-one experience because everybody here doesn't know everything in the ecosystem, so it's important that we pair each other up based off of that. Excuse me. Another great opportunity that we have coming up is the SIG meet and greet at the new contributor workshop that we have. It's at Barcelona as well, where SIGs come with good first issues and folks who are both new to open source as well as not new to open source, especially open source maintainers that come, will be paired up with those folks immediately. Google Summer of Code is also just launching. CNCF had 19 interns approved. Kubernetes had 6. So we will have 6 starting. And we'll have all of them present at this community meeting like we have in the past. And that's super fun. And then we also have Meet Our Contributors. This is a once-a-month program where we just have general Q&A with upstream mentors who want to help people with their journey, whether they're new or current. We actually get and have been getting more current contributor questions as of late, especially around time management and how to become an approver or reviewer, how to get into an owner's file, what's an owner's file, etc. So it's really super neat stuff. The playlist link is in here. We service anywhere between 100 to 1,000 people per episode, and this includes code-based tours and all kinds of fun stuff. What are we looking into next as far as mentoring contributor growth and that stuff is concerned? We're exploring Community Bridge, which is a Linux Foundation deal that was just announced at Open Source Leadership Summit. And we're going to see like how we can work with them, if we can work with them, etc. So maybe more about that on the next update. Succession planning via teams and roles are happening. Again, I briefly touched on that, but we're going to start to try to think about this programmatically and see how we can implement in SIGs across the board. So more stuff on that next cycle. And then mentoring at scale initiatives. What does this mean? This means you are mentoring multiple people at once. Again, not one-on-one. And we do this through like taped code-based tours. We've already done Kubernetes. We just did kube control. We also did CSI. If your team thinks that they could benefit from this, or if you're listening out there and you think that you could benefit from a code-based tour, we have an issue linked in here to collect suggestions on what folks want. We'll probably do the scheduler and a couple other things shortly as well. We're also doing live API code reviews, triage sessions, etc. Why is this important? This is important because it's also showing people how to do the thing that you do just so naturally as a reviewer, approver, or maintainer. And then we're also doing new contributor office hours, very targeted sessions for certain SIGs that are looking for certain kinds of contributors. Like for example, SIG Cluster Lifecycle just did one. So definitely get in touch with us if any of this stuff sounds interesting to you or your SIG. Automation and GitHub management. Nikita, are you on the line?
Yep, I can take this.
Yeah.
So in general, we are looking to improve the automation around owners files, because it's no secret that we have an insane amount of owners files across all our Kubernetes GitHub repos. So we wanted to do an audit of these files, especially in Kubernetes repo, to make sure we're keeping these files up to date, and also that we're promoting new folks who are doing the reviews today. So we have an issue and a spreadsheet which has this list of inactive owners, and we're going to follow up on this and look if someone should either be removed from an owner file or be moved to something called as emeritus, which is the other new shiny thing that we have. So we can now add an emeritus field in an owner's file. So this field is not actually detected by our automation, and that's by design. So this field is meant for people who have domain knowledge for that particular area, but aren't necessarily active in reviewing day to day. But they could probably be pinged if someone needs an extra pair of eyes. The other thing that we have is, George already mentioned about this, we want to enable a feature in So how owners files actually works is that the people listed as reviewers in an owners files are requested review whenever a PR comes in. But if the reviewer is probably on vacation, or apologies about that, if they're on vacation or they're just busy and they set up their GitHub status as busy, we will not request a review from them. There is a mailing list thread on the SIG contributor experience mailing list. So if you have any feedback or questions about that, please chime in there. This will also be posted later on to the Kubernetes dev mailing list. But if you have a first round of feedback, we would be more than happy to hear it. The next round of improvements that we want to bring on is making sure that all users who are being added in owners files are actually org members, because only org members can do an LGTM or an approve anyway. So we want to make sure that just to make sure that we have owners files hygiene. Can you go to the next slide, Paris? Cool. So we've also been working on some general streamlining and enabling automation across all our GitHub orgs. So we've enabled the FetaBot issue lifecycle automation. If you're not already familiar with FetaBot, it will add a comment, or it will add the comment and label, which says that an issue is marked as lifecycle stale, and then as lifecycle rotten, and ultimately close it if there hasn't been an activity for a certain number of days. We enabled the needs rebase plugin across all orgs, which will automatically detect if a PR has, if the branch has conflicts, and add a label which says it needs rebase, and also add a comment so the other comes to know about it. We've also enabled the trigger plugin across all orgs. This is essentially a no-op, but this means that if you configure prow jobs for your repo, you don't need to do anything with the plugins, prow plugins, or anything. So, and if you configure prow jobs for your repo, this means that if a non-org member creates a PR, their PR will automatically get a needs okay to test label. We've also enabled a new plugin which will restrict @mentions and commit messages, and will also restrict some other keywords which close issues like fixes or closes, because if you add @mentions and commit messages, the person who's being @mentioned gets spammed mercilessly whenever the commit message is pulled into a fork. So we want to make sure that we don't spam people, and we want to have less emails. Can I go to the next slide? Yeah, thanks. So regarding GitHub management, so contributor experience also owns GitHub management. We also have a GitHub admin team who have owners who are org admins for all our Kubernetes GitHub orgs. We're also responsible for creating new repos, renaming, deleting, archiving, all of them. So since the last time we had a contributor experience update in the community meeting, we've created almost 30 new repos. We also process membership requests for anyone who wants to join a Kubernetes GitHub org. A huge shout out to Bob and Stephen. Bob is on this call, I think, who process membership requests every single day. This is a lot of hard work, y'all. And we also have team management through config. It's a YAML file in Kubernetes/org repo. Please, please, please use this config if you want to get added to a team, or if you want to create a new team, and so on. Please do not use the UI, because all of the source of truth is this config. We will also be having a way and a process so that sub-projects can request their own websites. For example, Kind and KubeBuilder have their own websites today. So in general, sub-projects can have that, and we will have a proper process for it. There's already a PR open. Again, a huge shout out to Bob, who created that. And the GitHub admin team will have access to the Netlify admin stuff, and will be helping in setting up the Netlify configuration so that all sub-projects can create a website easily. And I suppose that's it for automation and GitHub management stuff.
Yes. Go Bob, go Nikita, and the whole entire GitHub management team, Aaron, Christoph. I know Catherine's been doing a lot of GitHub stuff. Y'all rock. Thank you. So I'm going to fly through these because I'm trying to be cognizant of time. We also have several other sub-projects, community management, events. Somebody's chatting me now. Events, communication, etc. One of those being Slack. That's what sort of like GitUps we're doing here. A special thanks to Catherine Berry for that. She's been working super hard on just making Slack better for us. We've added the report feature so you can report people who like are breaking code of conduct. And then also different kinds of additions where we can add Slack channels and all kinds of cool things via issue and PR. All of that is in the deck. Check it out. Super cool stuff. We've also been working on redesigning the community site, which launched. I'll go ahead and do a little live deal here. So we've got code of conduct. We've got our videos with our in our different playlist themes. So office hours, community meetings like this one, and then like meet our contributors and other random bits and stuff like that. Our discussion forums, why we discuss here, what we discuss here, upcoming events, find a meetup, and some news. So that's the redesigned community site. And then for more community management stuff, we also help SIGs and working groups bring to life and retire. A lot of working groups have completed their journeys as of late, so we've been helping them like I guess deoperationalize, if that's even a thing. I just made, or if I made that word up. And we've also been building community around chairs and tech leads for a number of different reasons. First and foremost, training, need to know emails for information that needs to get disseminated to humongous SIGs of like thousands of people. And then of course a Slack channel as well. Of course, we do events. We have one coming up in Barcelona. We definitely have seats available for new contributor workshop. If you're listening to this and have friends, family, coworkers who would like to know what it's like to be a Kubernetes contributor, this is your chance. We'll also have opportunities in Shanghai and San Diego as well. Read up on that. Also, thank you to all of our moderators. We have more than doubled in size in all of our platforms. This would be Zoom, YouTube, Slack, mailing lists, Discuss.Kubernetes, and so much more. We have some cool YouTube stats that we'll share with you throughout this community meeting in the next couple of months. Contributor documentation is always on our forefront. We're always reviving, reliving, editing, making better the contributor and developer guide. Even our outreachy intern, Edouard, stuck around. We're that cool, so that was awesome. What's our future look like? It looks real bright. We are trying to, a couple people, Aaron particularly, would love to tie SIG's YAML to all the things. We have a contributor site that's being worked on. The link is in there. You can file issues against it as well once we go live. We're continuing to build mentoring programs. We're going to give out another contributor experience survey, even more events, formal rewards and recognition programs, and even more training. How you can contribute. We need you. You can either be a moderator, be a mentor, help our SIG, spread communications far and wide, use good first issue help wanted labels, ask your SIGs what they're doing for mentoring, chairs. You can upload your YouTube meetings, fix your Zoom settings. Don't forget about your community meeting updates. Where to find us. Have a nice day.
All right, thanks. And with that, next is SIG scheduling. Bobby, are you on?
Yes, hi George, yes, I'm here.
Take it away.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Bobby Salamat. I am co-lead of SIG scheduling. And with that, let's jump on SIG updates. In 1.14, the major theme for 1.14 for scheduler was performance and stability of the scheduler. We did multiple algorithmic optimizations, resulting in almost 3x performance improvement. So back in like September of 2018, we could do about 35 pods per second in 5,000 node clusters. In February of 2019, we reached 100 pods per second in 5,000 node clusters. This was a huge improvement and a big milestone for us. Thanks to our contributors for all their work. Another important feature that we graduated to stable in 1.14 was pod priority and preemption. This was actually a highly requested feature from a large number of users and is already being used by various parts of Kubernetes ecosystem as well as our user workloads. If you are interested, you can find a lot of documentation about how to use this feature. Chances are you may already be using it actually. And in fact, in more recent versions of Kubernetes, you use this feature whether you know it or not, because most of the critical components of Kubernetes, such as daemon sets and all, nowadays use priority for guaranteed scheduling, even when clusters are under resource pressure. Another project that we delivered in 1.14 was improving scheduling fairness. So the scheduler tends to give higher priority to high priority pods when it comes to scheduling them. Basically, they are moved to the beginning of the scheduling queue, and in those cases, there was a chance that a high priority unschedulable pod could take a lot of CPU cycles and a lot of scheduling cycles from the scheduler. We've added backup mechanism to deal with these kind of scenarios, and now scheduler treats pods more fairly. And we also improved the stability and reliability of the scheduler by fixing some of the race conditions that existed in the scheduler and discovered before. So what's up in 1.15? The main theme for 1.15 is workload reliability and scheduler extensibility. So for improving reliability of workloads, we are delivering a new feature called even pod spreading. With even pod spreading, you can specify how your pods should be spread among different failure domains. For example, you can say, I want my pods to be spread among zones or among nodes or regions or whatever. You know, you can also specify a custom label. What is different between even pod spreading versus anti-affinity that existed before is that anti-affinity, or more accurately, hard anti-affinity, allow you to put one pod in a particular failure domain. For example, if you specify that your web servers have anti-affinity to one another on the same node, then no more than one web server could run on the same node. Or the same thing, if you wanted to one web server per zone, no more than one web server could run in that zone. But now, with even pod spreading, the scheduler can look at the number of zones and look at the number of pods and spread them evenly among those zones. So you can have more than one pod per zone or whatever failure domain you specify. We are also working on improving scheduler extensibility and customizability. Basically, we are creating and building the scheduling framework. If you're not familiar, there is a CAP for that. The scheduler framework changes the scheduler architecture from a monolithic architecture to a pluggable one. Alpha version of this is targeted for 1.15. We are building, as we speak, some of the extension points for the scheduler that allows plugins to be built for these extension points. And we are adding a new configuration mechanism for these plugins as well. So we expect to have the whole scheduling framework built in 1.16, but in 1.15, we are going to have a lot of important extension points as well as configuration. So we are also working for better pod priority support for batch workloads. In batch workloads, priority is not necessarily, pod priority is not necessarily always great in the way that it is today. So if you have a batch workload with a high priority, chances are that your workload can go and preempt other batch workloads. When batch workloads are preempted, all the work done by those workloads, most of the times, is basically gone, and you have to start from scratch again next time that the workload starts. So instead, we are introducing a non-preempting priority. The benefit of this priority is that it actually helps those workloads to, first of all, not get preempted by other workloads when they are running. And also, if they are not running, and if they have higher priority, they go to the head of the queue, but they don't preempt other existing workloads. This is needed for batch processing. We are expecting to have this feature in 1.15. There are also other smaller efforts like supporting less than and greater than operators for interpod affinity and anti-affinity, and also improving monitoring of the scheduler by introducing new metrics. So how these plans affect you? These changes are expected to be fully backward compatible. The only thing that we expect to happen is that cluster autoscaler may not necessarily work very well with the scheduling framework, because the scheduling framework allows the scheduler to be very customizable, and it could change. Basically, the behavior of the scheduler could change depending on the configuration and the plugins that you use. So cluster autoscaler has this mechanism that predicts the scheduler decisions, and that logic may not necessarily work well when the scheduling framework is out, because the scheduling framework is not necessarily always have the exact same behavior anymore. We are working with the cluster autoscaler to read the configuration and apply these configurations to the cluster autoscaler logic as well. So hopefully that that work will be delivered soon as well.
About a minute and a half.
I'm sorry?
You have about a minute and a half, but it looks like you're almost
done. We are almost done. So where you can find us on our homepage, Slack channel, our mailing list. And finally, we have a contributor summit session at KubeCon, which is one day before the start of the conference. If you are there, please join us. We also have a SIG intro and SIG deep dive sessions at KubeCon. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Just a few announcements here before we wrap it up. Test grid alerts for release blocking jobs. The deadline is Tuesday, May 14th. Also a reminder, this is the KubeCon Cloud Native Con CFP for North America. That's the one in December, is open. So the CFP is already open for that. And then some shout outs for the week. So the way this works, if you see someone going above and beyond the Call of Duty, mention them as shout outs, and we'll mention their great work in this community meeting. DIMS would like to thank Damini Satya, Jim Angel, Zach Arnold, SBE Vrek, and Jill Rondeau. Congratulations on your Google Open Source Peer Bonus win with your work on Kubernetes, and there's a link there. Guinevere would like to shout out and send sparkles to Salty SH for the most amazing code-based walkthrough to get me ready to share with the new contributors at KubeCon. Thank you so much. And Jeremy WX would like to do a big shout out to Adelina Tuveni, I hope I got that right, for helping me with an AKS engine problem after banging my head on my desk for most of the week. She pointed out I was using a version with a bug, my head and my desk. Thank you very much. And with that, do we have any last minute announcements or anything anyone would like to mention before we break?
Yes, sign up to be a mentor at KubeCon Barcelona. Sign up to the Diversity Lunch and Hack. We pair program there. Sign up for all of the events, all of the things. That is it.
Anybody else?
Yes, I have a quick announcement.
Signode
and SIG Scalability, I am coming for you. You have jobs on the release blocking dashboard for the master branch of Kubernetes. You need an email address for me to send alerts to. All of the other SIGs have responded to my email. You two have not. I know I gave you until next week, but I'm coming for you. That's all.
The beard always gets his person. Anybody else? All right, great, everyone. We'll see everyone next week. And then remember, the week after, we'll be at KubeCon Cloud Native Con. Happy Thursday, whatever day it is.
Happy Catter Day. Happy 114 team is getting their release t-shirts day. It's great. See you later.
Love that shirt.
Yeah, try to make that a thumbnail. See you, everyone.
Bye.